Wow. That's yeah. That's really something. That's really something, isn't it? Uh so it's come to my attention that there's a game out called VCard. I saw it in the mall actually. And I thought it looked kind of interesting. I thought it might be kind of neat to see internet content creators getting their chance to be immortalized in trading card form um simply through a gamer subs sponsorship. That's my understanding of it. I've heard it's bad, and I've taken a look at the rules, and I've taken a look at the card design, and I think I kind of understand why it's bad, right? Um I'm not here to offer like magical solutions. I'm not here to literally do the work for these designers, cuz I don't think that's fair to them. You know, these are people who went into the field to make their own thing, and if that's what they want to do, if they want to be those people who like put something out there, hey, more power to them, right? um I do want to talk about maybe an approach that might make this game more playable and even more collectible than it already is. Um I mean, I'm just going to be real with you. I think the idea of like internet celebrities manifesting in real life is just fascinating. You know, I really do think it's interesting, and I like it a lot of the time. I think when people get to like apply themselves and like be out there as like a real manifested thing. Call me someone who's been inducted by Mega 64, but I think that kind of like grassroots sort of growth is really interesting. So I made a little outline to kind of talk about what I think is wrong with the VCard TCG, and I broke it down so it'd be easy to talk about. So I've identified three main categories of things that probably need to change about the game. And I want to start with the aesthetic. Um, I don't think VCard really understands like what like a card game is, or that it is a card game, right? You'll see my last point on aesthetic is, after all of that, it needs to be able to talk about itself. What is a card game? What are cards? We think of gambling as like, casinos and video games, sports betting. We think of gambling as going to family gatherings and sitting there with your uncles and cousins and throwing down Uno cards or whatever for funny money. We think of betting as the local pool at the office. We think of betting as like something hilarious that we do to get our friends to eat spicy food, right? But betting and gambling actually has deep ties to anthropology. um I think it was sometime in the Neolithic period that people started rolling bone dice. And eventually, as mass production and things like the steam engine, things like the printing press came into existence, things like card games started to become a lot more popular, right? And believe it or not, these things uh, evolved in sort of like the same sphere of thought as like something like fortune telling. I think card games, especially TCGs, especially like the big two like TCGs and like the Western consciousness, I guess anime games come in and out of popularity. I say anime games, but it's like, like I mean, like the Bushi Road games kind of like came in and out of the Western consciousness. The One Piece game is really big right now. I remember Final Fantasy, that's not an anime, but that was like big for a moment. Force of Will TCG was big for a moment. That's not tied to anything like a specific production or whatever. So when I think of like card games, I think of like TCGs. Like I think of like two of the big originators, right? I think of Magic the Gathering, Richard Garfield's creation, and sort of the process that went into creating that game, um and Yu-Gi-Oh, which was like a love letter to Magic. It's a derivative of Magic the Gathering, right? And this game, it feels like a derivative of a derivative of a derivative. um it feels like someone took like Card Fight Vanguard and like still just like didn't quite get it, and then threw some Pokemon TCG things on there, threw in like a sponsorship, like IPs that they technically could license and convince people to license, which is, whatever. Excuse me. um but it's really it's lost touch with its roots, which is like, understandable. um and so I think it needs to understand that it's a card game. I think it needs to understand that it came from fortune telling, that it came from this like Neolithic form of gambling. When I think of a game like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh, what I'm looking at is what is essentially a tarot card with power, and this power exists in the game session, right? I can play a Rampaging Baloth, or I can play Summon Skull, and I can recognize these things as like facets of culture, as something that I can be, and and understand that the game designers have decided that it has a power level or some kind of effect on the game that like bends the rules of the game, right? It's like you're playing a role in tarot. You're literally acting out like tarot in a way. And so I feel like VCard loses a lot of its soul by forgetting what a card game is. Um and so that, moving on to my second point, I think you just need to Google the word V card. I mean, we all know like virgin card, like, oh, I'm not a virgin anymore, like whatever. V card is apparently like an electronic business card. Like this is on my cell phone. Like VCF files. Like I've definitely seen this before. Um you know, and it's VCard comes up as the second Google search result. So I'm like wondering like why don't I understand anything about VCards by looking at like what a VCard is. You know what I mean? It exists in the cultural context, and it extends itself into culture in a way to where people can like speak freely about these things, right? I think it needs to be more opinionated. So this is where, I don't doubt that this was like a thought that crossed someone's mind, right? But I can understand how, in defending the relationships between GamerSups and its partners, that someone might have some sort of like, I don't know, cold feet about. But it really goes in line with like that first point, that this needs to understand that it's a card game. What I mean by it needs to be more opinionated is like, you need to just lock it in. It can't be this like flat representation of life where like there was a point in time where you could hold up like an Iron Mouse card, and you could hold up like a Shindig's card. I don't know if that exists, but it very well could. And these two cards are like equal power level, right? Like that's a very nice concept, And what you're doing already is you're immortalizing these people, right? These people already exist in the card game. People already love underdog stories. People already love playing meta. You know, when you approach a card game, you already have people who like playing meta. You already have people who like breaking meta. You already have people who like the aesthetics, and you already have people who like latch on to like certain archetypes or play styles, right? Like, you don't have to worry about people liking the people in the cards. Sorry, my dog's at the door. Wait 1 sec. I can't pause the recording. Freaking OBS. All right. You don't have to worry about people liking the cards for that, right? Like, you've already immortalized them. Like, one piece of cardboard at the end of days is as valuable as the other piece of cardboard, right? And, you know, any direction that you take this game is going to disrupt that. You're going to develop metas as you introduce mechanics, because you're just not simply going to understand with precognition that, oh, this effect's going to be really good, this effect's going to be really good, this effect's going to be really good. And that's part of the fun of a card game, is like the players themselves solve the format. It evolves. People revisit formats all the time. And so I think you need to be willing to be more opinionated. I feel like that there's apprehension about that, because you need to be able to tell the stories of VTubing. However you start, VCard needs to be some jumping off point that becomes a conversation about what VCard is. I mean, we see this with Magic the Gathering, we see this with Yu-Gi-Oh! The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Releases were like, booster packs had like 5 cards in Japan. It was like a magazine. Like, every new pack of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards was like another like set of commentary about the game itself, or about the environment that it existed in. Like, Metal Raiders has some humongous cards. Metal Raiders has Solemn Judgment. Metal Raiders, I think, has Mirror Force, right? Like, they, you know, things like Magic Ruler had Confiscation and you know, Forceful Century and stuff like that. Like, there were things that enter the game that ultimately are very like interesting, right? But like, they need to be interesting to talk about. And so, like, you know, this VCard thing needs to have like a jumping off point at the very least. You could spend the rest of the game trying to apologize to these people about, like, you know, what you did wrong by trying to tell people that like VCard exists, and that VCard like decided like this person gets a lot of viewers, this person gets a lot of viewers, or whatever. Because at the end of the day, that's what VTubing is about. VTubing is about you know, viewership. It's about community. It's about like participation in like a creative effort, right? But it's also about you know, pulling in like numbers, and like what you need to do to adjust to certain Twitch metas, like what you need to do to be like an up to date like VTuber. You could have a whole set about TikTok in VCard, and people would just be like, yeah, no, I know, like, the TikTok meta was crazy. This person did this, this person did this. I remember that episode. I remember that episode. And I feel like that would do a lot in like fleshing out the soul, and then guiding design towards like where they need to decide what the power level of cards are, right? And I think like as like the game goes on, like it becomes more natural to like reference back, or to like say one thing is very different from another thing. Like it keeps you from cornering yourself in design to this point where like everything is like very boring. You can like make mistakes, but then it becomes very understandable by the player base, like what mistake was made, right? Like, you know, and you can dispute whether or not this is true, because we're talking about tarot cards with rules, right? So yeah, it has to capture cultural moments. It can't be afraid to talk about who is or isn't successful. And then after all that, it needs to be able to talk about itself. And that's what I have to say about the aesthetic of the cards. So, and the aesthetic is the entire construction of the card. I'm not talking about full art. I'm not talking about rules text. I'm not talking about card names. I'm talking about effects. Like, why am I modulating power level? Why am I what am I doing with the weaknesses? Like, what aspect of the game is like this card affecting? What aspect of the game is this card affecting? Like, I think that's like very important, right? Rules. The mulligan rule needs to change, or deck construction needs to change. The mulligan rule's terrible. I'm not even talking about losing a card, right? You're saying that the person loses after 2 mulligans. What do you mean by that? Like, I don't understand. Like, what are you mitigating by like enforcing that someone has to have like so many power cards like in their deck? You already have type weaknesses, so like pinholing my deck into like one character like ostensibly makes them weaker because they lose support, and I lose to like different type weaknesses. So I don't understand what that's about. It already sounds like it's a disadvantage to play like a single Oshi, or is that what Oshi? No, I know what it's called. Oshi in the deck, right? Because it's like, what do you mean? What, like, I'm already at a disadvantage. Why am I just losing the game? It doesn't make sense to me. Or deck construction needs to change. So you either need to like just let people mulligan over and over again, like, you know, just go 6 cards, 6 cards, 6 cards, just over and over and over again, or go 7 cards over and over again. Even I think that would even make a lot more sense. Because apparently the meta is decided by who like has more cards in hand or whatever. Or deck construction needs to change. I mean, like, people love having an extra deck. People love having a command zone. I've heard, I don't know a lot about the One Piece TCG, but like people like their essential resources to be like consistently available, and I know that uses an extra deck. Force of Will TCG has a J ruler and a Magic Stone deck, you know, and you have to choose between like flipping your J ruler or evoking like a new Magic Stone, right? So there's like a lot of design space there. I don't know why the mulligan rule makes you lose. I think that's really dumb. I like the update with like the 5 card hands. That's really cool. I think that's a really good idea. Being able to play through your whole deck is like awesome. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is trying to do that right now. Magic's really trying to do that right now. Hearthstone kind of set the standard with that and made it very interesting with their fatigue rules. So yeah, like, just mulligan rules need to change, or deck construction needs to change. You need to stop eradicating cards like now. Like, you need a testing team. And you should revert erratas. I think if someone like spent a bunch of money to buy Cyanide and Happiness and it doesn't do what it says on the card anymore, like, what's the freaking point? Like, you're going to have a lot of choppy, really static formats in the beginning, and it's like, it's tough, right? And to like be a card game that like faces the challenge of having to exist next to like another more successful card game, right? What did Yu-Gi-Oh do? Yu-Gi-Oh would release 5 card sets. They'd release like Mountain, and like, let's just look right now. Yu-Gi-Oh what is it? YGO Pro Deck. Where's the, this is the one with the card drafter, right? Card database, packs, OCG sets. Where are you at? Holy moly. Where am I clicking? Okay, here we go. What? Okay, here we go. Booster 1. A month later. You had Volume 1 and Booster 1 a month later. Booster 1. Kaime, new typing, new cards, very small set. Came out with new attack boosts, new stat boosts. Volume 1 is like also a very small set. Comes with like very fundamental cards. This was not how it was released in the US, so I don't expect a lot of English speaking people to understand that. But look at this. 2 months later, 2 days later, 2 months later, a week later, a month 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 later, 2 months later, a month later. And they did this until they got up to Magic Ruler. And Magic Ruler, that's when they switched it up. Because they had printed enough of these small sets that they felt like, look at how small this is. Like, they felt like they had solved the game at that point. And I'm not gaslighting you, because you grew up with the TCG sets, most likely. It started with Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. It says nothing about how the game was created, because they had already solved it in the OCG. You need a testing group. You need to pivot quickly. You need to unerrata those cards, because they're going to exist forever. People already invested in them, and you can't shut people down. You can't tell people who want to invest in this game and carry it in their store, hey, you know that $40 staple that we printed in this set? Well, we're about to errata it down to $7 because we made an oopsie and we don't know how to release cards or whatever. Like, I'm telling you right now, you need to focus on smaller sets in this new frontier. Yu-Gi-Oh! Existed as a love letter to Magic. Magic was already the better game to play. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was dinky. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was unfinished. It makes more sense to focus on these smaller sets or do anything else. You can't errata these cards, though. That's the big thing, is you're going to scare everyone off if you just do this Chronicles thing, if you just do this digital CCG thing where, like, you're just like, oh, errata it. Just get it out of there, because you're ruining people's cardboard. You are ruining people's cards. And then I said, remove the weakness bonus or introduce a new mechanic for tagging out. So like I said, I don't understand what the weaknesses are for. They don't make any sense. And that makes sense, right? Because you don't even have viewers implemented in the rules yet. Where are the viewers? Where are the raids? Where's the networking? Where are the cons? Where are the events? What's going on in the world of VTubing that this guy does this and this guy does that? It's blowing my freaking mind. What, you print these like in between cards, you print Cyanide and Happiness, you print Reaper, you print whoever else. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to me at all. Like, remove the weakness bonus. It's 100% just tacked on, or figure something out with it. You know, assign elemental attributes to the guys. Like, hey, the design team came back and we thought you'd be good as this, right? What? Is that a new conversation for you? Like, sorry. I'm sorry. But, you know, I'm ranting, right? Just trying to cover every angle. Anyways, it's... Give me 1 second. This dog's gonna go insane. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to cover every angle, so if my emotions get ahead of me, it's because I'm engaged, you know. I'm alone in my room. You know what it is. Remove the weakness bonus or introduce a new mechanic for tagging out. I mean, like, we already have rating, we already have switching channels, we already have collabs, we already have what is it? Switching games. We have so many things that, like, I don't understand why the concept of, like, tagging out your guy is, like, so foreign to the game. Like, it doesn't make sense with like what the game is, like, trying to be or, like, represent. Because Pokemon even has tagging out. Pokemon doesn't. I'm pretty sure in Pokemon TCG you can mulligan as much as you need to have a starter Pokemon in your opening hand. You just have to show them your hand. Like, it just, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I understand the removal aspect of it. I don't understand, like, the damage bonus. Like, especially with no, like, tagging out. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you just have to do something else with it. I mean, it just has to mean something else, right? Like, these guys mix well with these guys. You have the advantage on this guy, so you get to play this card or whatever. If you want to like reward people for like calling it or adapting to the meta, there's like a lot of other ways you can address that. I'm not saying impossible things here. And then design, I don't know, I just wanted to say like a couple things, like take tips from Magic, print problems, let them form a meta, print solutions. You cannot do this. You can't do this. From a marketing perspective, you can't do this. This kills games. This makes people afraid to carry your card game. I don't care how big you think you are as gamersubs. If you want to run paper tournaments, if you want people to be engaged with this as like a card game, like if you want to be in stores, if you want to get people together to like actually like feel safe about putting their money into a game that they can pass on to someone else, right? Like you have to stop this errating of behavior. Like print problems, let them form a meta, print solutions. The game is going to be, by today's gaming standards, a boring melee fest until well-designed answers, Jesus Christ, dude. Until well-designed answers are printed or pivots surprise us, and this is a good thing. One deck metas, believe it or not, have a history of being incredibly interesting and skill testing. Some people get frustrated with it. Other people love it. People love a solved format, because when a format's solved, all of a sudden I have this many anti-meta solutions to it. I have like this many ways to tweak my deck. I have this many things to like think about card for card in the mirror match. It really does engage players like a lot more than you would give them credit for. Like it's not terrible to have like a one deck meta for a second. People get bored of decks if someone in the community that's like this big community guy or whatever wants to come in and be like, this format sucks, this is the only deck in the community. Like, the community is gonna react to it that way. So, you can't be too afraid of it. You don't want to be stale. And answers shift the power. And then taking time to fan out other ideas that don't necessarily complement this idea. You can think of it 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 1 here. 2 is its own new thing. 3 solves 1. Let's see. 1.5, 3 complements 1.5. All of a sudden, you have something completely unpredictable, right? And then 4 answers 2, but 2 was never a problem. So 4, we don't know why it exists. Maybe you want to avoid that, Like, that's all I can really say about it. But yeah, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I want to see like a new cool card game. I like the Mega 64 effect, right? But like the thing about it is like it's like it's never going to be a thing in paper if it doesn't find itself, So, hey, good luck. I think it looks good. I think it looks cool. And you're immortalizing people like in card form in a way that brings the characters that they represented to life in ways that are just unprecedented before. I think that's amazing. Really cool. It's it's really just one of those things where it's like, as the team develops and as these cards like kind of figure out like what works and what doesn't, while keeping up with this conversation, it's like it could be a really cool thing. It could be a really cool thing. So, yeah, That's all I have to say about VCard.